Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. This is Angela Coulter, and
Sarah Sieg Evanioni.
so getting on a little late this morning, but there's no late, just a different timeline.
That's right.
So where to start today? What do you feel starting?
Oh, I don't know. We should probably talk something about the disperse that you came up with over. Was that over the
Oh,
weekend?
right. Yes, yeah, it was over the holiday, which felt like, just this really extended weekend last week.
Right, right. Maybe that's why I'm so exhausted today.
Yeah. So, where did it start? Yeah, so last week we talked about getting bringing those crumbs in the fold front and center that we need to resolve so that we can be in that place as the pillar of wholeness, right? So, I figure we should start there and move forward
Right.
into the week from there. So, the first time I had this awareness, it was such an odd experience. I was telling Sarah about this. So, I went to go visit my daughter in Wilmington. It's where she goes to college, and of course by the beach. So it's our beach. It's what we call our beach condo. And so my husband and I went to see her for the fourth. And every time I go, because her apartment's literally 12, 13 minutes from the beach, I'll go for sunrise every morning and sit on the beach. So she came with me on the 4th of July, and we were sitting there, and like the sky was mostly clear, but there was this big, huge, monstrous, like really cool thundercloud. Those clouds that are really tall, like they just look so cool. They look like a city in themselves, right? And so we're watching that as we're watching the sunrise. So we have the cloud over to the right, and then the sunrise is coming up over to the left, and and just for fun or whatever. I don't know even why it even occurred to me, like at all, because we were just sitting there talking, and I said, and like, look at that. We were trying to take pictures of the lightning and the cloud over the water there, and then, like, it's time for that to just disperse. Like, we should just have it disperse. And that was like the word disperse, right? But it was almost like the word was in these big capital letters in my mind. It was like disperse. And then I was looking at it, and I looked over, and we had this little crab that was, adorable and digging a little hole in the sand, like 10 feet away from us. So we were looking at that, watching the sunrise. And then I just sort of let that go, and sort of just zoning out. And as the sun was coming up, I suddenly noticed these, like this line of clouds I hadn't seen before, right? And I looked up, and it was this really bizarre formation that I could not have caught with my phone because it was so wide across the sky. But literally, there was this band, and it was like a band that looked like a ripple of clouds, and then there was another one, and then another one, and there were these spaces in between them. And I looked over, and literally, that thundercloud was dispersing. It was almost like it was dispersing in the clouds and expanding out and just sort of allowing itself to just reassimilate, right? So I thought that was really cool. So I said to my kids, so I said to my daughter, "Oh, look at how awesome! See how powerful we are! Like all we have to do is just say disperse, and it just disperses, right?"
Right,
So I thought, oh, that's sort of cool. And I really didn't think much about it because this is sort of like the magic in every day. And
right.
then Friday was just this bizarre day for everybody, apparently, like energetically. I guess that's when these earthquakes started. I don't even know if that was,
That they started Thursday and continued on.
yeah. So I was like totally clueless. My daughter, and by the way, my daughter's internet was out the entire time we were there, like from Wednesday to Friday. We went to leave Friday. We got halfway home. We realized my computer had been left there through this miscommunication with my husband. And so, like, we turned around to go back to get it. And we literally got 3 miles from my daughter's apartment, and we got to this dead stop. And we're sitting there, and it's like, okay, you think it's traffic going into town. There's one major road going into and out of Wilmington if you want to go, onto the highway and going north anyway. So we were sitting there and just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And it wasn't even slow traffic. It was no traffic. It was like no movement whatsoever.
Right.
And then finally we put up Waze. We're like, because Waze, sometimes tells you what's going on. And then we see all these red lines and it tells us to go like cut over the side road. So we did that. And of course, that's what everybody else has been getting told to go, and do.
Right.
So there's there's a whole line of cars on that road. So we're sitting there. So it was an entire hour where we went maybe 10 feet.
That's crazy. That's
It,
hard.
yeah. So finally, and I said, and it was really funny because finally, I can't remember where in there I got this, but it felt like there was this amazing amount of pressure that was like built up in this one spot where we were sitting, right? Obviously, because there's everybody sitting there not moving for an hour.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this is crazy. We've got to do something. And I said to my husband, we've got to do something to change this, right? So at that point, I was like, I'm going to go see what's going on. And I get out of the car and I walk up like probably 3 blocks, go back out to the main road. And I'm talking, there's a guy standing outside of his house. And I started talking to him and he said, oh, well, somebody hit like there's a major intersection there. Somebody hit the light pole and the entire string of like traffic lights were in the road, right? So blocking the road mostly on one side. And on the other side, whatever was working was just red and wasn't changing for like an hour. And they were just getting people there to sort of address the situation, which is why the traffic was so bad and we weren't moving.
Right.
So at that, and it was really funny while he was saying that, this really loud voice just comes in. I think it was around there. And because I looked over and I could see the intersection where they just started having trucks. You could see trucks pulling up and cops there and whatever. And this big loud voice just was like, disperse, disperse, right? And then I was like, And it was funny because it was like almost like the tension just went sort of like in ripples, sort of like that cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because the guy was like, oh, is there anything I could do for you? Do you want to use the bathroom? I was like, yeah, I could use the bathroom. Sure, if you're offering.
Yeah,
So
that's a long time to sit and wait.
yeah, and so especially because we'd already been in the car for 2 hours because we'd been halfway there and turned back, and so then it's 3 hours, and so I was like, yeah, sure. So I go and use the guy's bathroom. He was really nice. He was like a retired UNCW professor, or whatever. And then I thanked him, and I go back, and of course, every other car is rolling down their window, and they're like, "What's going on? Do you have it?" And so of course, I'm like the news lady as I'm traveling back to the car. And I get sit down in Scott's car, and I literally was like that whole like echo of that word disperse. It was like I was like, well, that's so interesting. And I could almost feel like it's almost like you could feel the ground rumbling underneath. It was just like such a powerful like energy. And like literally within 10 minutes of getting back to the car, everything just started moving again. Right. So
Well,
and I
and
was like,
I sent you that screenshot from over the weekend about my friend who lives in Southern California talking about how the earthquake forecast said that there's still energy that needs to be dispersed.
right. The word disperse, which I thought was so funny because it's not like a word that just comes up, like randomly, but it has been. So
Right,
it was so funny after I had shared that with you, and then you texted me that, like, well, look at the word exactly that they used was dispersed.
right, right. But
So
it's that energy of the earth needing to be dispersed.
yeah, yeah. And if you think
Coming
of
up with
that,
that point to disperse.
yeah, and if you think of that, like, and because I was sitting there and I'm like, why am I stuck in this? Because, we get into that thinking of, well, everything should just be easy. And it's like, well, actually, you're in a hurry to get anywhere except for the fact you're tired of being in the car, right?
Right.
And then there's like, why did I have to come? Well, why did this all happen? And I come back and da da. And it was just like, and it was really funny because there's Sierra texting me from work because she was at work, and I was like telling her how irritating I was getting irritated sitting in the car, right? And then she goes, "Okay, mom, This is my kids. They pulled this on me. I'm gonna channel you right now." She says this to me in the text. She goes, "Think of it as an adventure, and there's a reason that you're there."
That's right.
And I was like, I'm 3 miles away. I can just get out of the car and walk to your place and back probably.
Right.
But I have flip flops on. I don't know if 6 miles would do well with the flip flops. So
That'd be a
actually,
challenge.
yeah, actually, it was funny because I got back to the car and I told Scott about my conversation with the guy, and he's like, oh, if he asked he asked you, is there anything you should need? You should have said, do you have a bike I could borrow? I really just want
Right.
to just go to my daughter's apartment and get my computer and come back and we could turn around. But anyway, that was it. It was almost like I was there and immersed in that faith to help that dispersion of the energies in a conscious manner, right? Even though, and it was like, okay, and I sort of got that feeling of being just there. And it wasn't like it was my cause or anything else. It was like I was just up in the middle of it, right? So I was sort of like thinking about that all weekend or like sitting on that.
Well, if you look at so many things that occur in nature, like hurricanes, it's that buildup of that. Granted, it's low pressure, but it's still that buildup, and then the storm is the release.
Right.
The same with an earthquake. The same with the thunderstorms in the afternoon. They
Right.
build from the heat of the day, and everything builds up to then disperse.
Right.
And it's
And
only then do you get the real movement, change, um, flow forward.
yeah. Well, breaks up the blockage, right?
Right, right,
So, so I was thinking about that because it really comes back to that those crumbs that we're bringing front and center, right? Because now it's the crumbs that are the deepest held secrets of the ego, right?
right,
Like we've been
right,
talking about. That the ego's like, oh no, I got that taken care of. It's we can just put this over here and
right,
until it comes front and center, which is then the deepest parts of the running over the bunny with the mower thing or whatever. And it's like almost a shock to bring it in front of us so that we can
right,
see it. And then
right.
it's and then it's and so it feels like what it felt like when I really went back and thought about that feeling that I had while I was sitting in that bizarre traffic jam. Because by the way, we went and got the computer. We met Sierra for dinner because she was just about to take a break for work. And then I was like, well, we'll try to get out of town because there was no way out of town at that point because the lights were literally on that road. I was like, we'll see. We'll try to get out of town. If not, we'll just be staying here another night. And literally, we got done with dinner, and the road was clear. Like there was like nothing ever happened.
Right,
So,
right,
so it's like if we disengage from the emotion, right, of the ego or the expectation of the ego that's connected to whatever the situation or the crumb is, right?
right,
And we simply are that beacon, right, of whatever, of wholeness. And wholeness, it's, well, okay, and I'm whole. I have no exclusions. So therefore, I can disperse any energy because I don't have anything excluding, like that's an exclusion in my reality. So to be
right,
that pillar of wholeness is to say, okay, just disperse it. It doesn't need to be a
right,
blockade or like what I think of as like a big zit or a volcano ready to explode or an
right.
earthquake.
And you don't have any emotional attachment to the outcome.
Right,
It's just dispersed.
right,
Well, and like I texted you, it's like, the stars before they go supernova, they collapse and then disperse.
hmm
And last week when we talked about when we did our share, and it was like going in to
yeah,
be able to go out,
yeah.
which
Well,
was
it was like going
that's
in to realize everything out is in, and it was like, yeah, that was huge too, right?
right. Yep.
Right, and we do have that power, right? So people laugh, people laugh. Like my daughter laughed about the cloud thing dispersing, and I was like, but literally, if you look in the sky, you saw these like rings that were like a current, a ripple of the cloud just melting away, and I was like, because we don't believe at some level we have these, we will believe to a certain point, right?
Right.
But can I create that cloud dispersing? Can I change the, pressure in the earth to disperse, or that particular spot?
Well, and I think it goes hand in hand with claiming our power.
Right. True. Totally. And so it's
Yeah,
for us to believe that everything is related to us, right? Everything is part of our reality, and it's whatever we're guided. So when that word disperse just comes in and it's just like as a command, right? It was like disperse, and I was like, okay, let it
yeah,
rip. And so it's for us to do that, not just going within to realize that all without is within, right? And that expansion is truly inner, right? It's
right,
also to recognize that, we talk about how the external is just a reflection of the internal, right?
exactly. Yeah,
So a traffic jam, an earthquake, a volcano, a tsunami, or whatever is all just a representation of what's going on internally, not only at our individual level, but at the collective level. And we do have the power to say we can just disperse the energy and release it without having to create the catastrophe.
right, right, right. Which we've come to that place now where if it doesn't disperse, catastrophe is the next step.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah. And I just think there's so many of those things within us that it's so important right now to acknowledge without that emotion, to just say, I see you and I recognize you, and it's time for you to disperse. Time to disperse this within me
Right.
and to stop.
Regardless of what the dispersal looks like.
Right. And and maybe that's where that you said you had some random anxiety come in, right, yesterday morning. And so that feels like it was like a year ago. I was like, was that just
I know.
yesterday? I think it was.
Yeah.
and And it's like, well, that's the letting go of how you think it's supposed to look, right? And if
Right.
we literally take the command and just say, disperse, let it go, really, it's what we're saying is let it go. And I'm not putting any more energy to this creation of whatever this ticking time bomb or volcano or explosion or earthquake is. So, and if you look at the earth, we have so many of those things coming front and center right now, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, you
Yep.
saw I mean, I don't know if anybody saw, like, even the stuff that was going on in Oregon a couple weeks ago with the politics and stuff, and
Right.
I mean, so there's some tension building up there. Disperse it.
Right. Well, and heat wave in Alaska,
Yeah.
and just everything melting.
Yep.
Yeah.
And coming to that place of everything is us, whether it's the icebergs melting or an earthquake or a traffic
Right.
jam or a pimple, it's all us. And it's no
Right.
difference in terms of like importance or whatever. If it's little or huge, it doesn't matter. It's still something where we're congealing is the word that I want to put together right now, but forcing together this compacted energy that is going to explode because we are in such a momentum of moving forward right now. There's just no place for that anymore.
Right. Right. There's the tiniest bump is magnified.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no difference between a grain of sand and a mountain. No difference. It just is.
Right. Right.
God, even acknowledging that just feels really good.
Yeah, it does. I feel like it changes everything. All the same while nothing's different. It's like just seeing it differently. Different understanding of the same circumstances, I guess. Better way to put it for me. Well, there's your.
Oh yeah, there's life. Oh, and it's rest. Oh, good morning, Anne. So there's that energy of yeah, and it is nothing new, but it is new in a way because we've come to this level of a movement, momentum, right, and expansion. I don't even talk about expansion and remembrance and resolving so much exponentially right now. Oh, there's
It,
another yawn.
it almost seems in the past when we've gotten to this place, we've chosen to not disperse.
Right,
We've
and it's for
chosen
us,
to push it back down.
right, which then causes an even bigger, like super volcanic, super
Right,
volcanic explosion, or you know, or an asteroid hitting the Earth, or whatever you
right.
want to call it.
It just
Or yeah.
postponed and
So
magnet.
so if we really take the bull by the horns with that talking about that expression, and we just say, okay, well, I'm going to commit myself to observe every everything that would be anything but smooth and flowing and easy, like in even the smallest crumb. And I will commit myself to observing it without, free of emotion, right? In a way that I can trust in the bigger picture that it is important to disperse it and commit myself to allowing that to disperse, even if
Right,
I have to, even if I have to command it to do so, right?
right.
And then I let go of how that looks. And that sounds really easy until it becomes really personal, I think.
No, I agree. I completely agree. And that's when the um, detachment, not attached to the outcome of the disbursement, becomes
Right.
critical.
Right. Without expectation, right?
Right.
What that's supposed to look like.
Yep. Right. Right.
Well, because then you can't build up any tension if you allow it to disperse continuously, right?
Yeah, that's the true release.
Yeah. That feels really good to even just think about that, like, oh, yeah, nice and relaxing, right?
Right. Yeah.
That feels really good. I'm just like, yep, that just zoned me out.
Yeah, that feels really good. I've had a knot in my stomach all morning, and that just was like, oh yeah, that took care of that.
Well, then that's what we need to go and do, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
That's the commitment for us to allow that. So anything, so, so yeah, anything from, you want to talk about natural disasters? Like I said, there's no difference. What I'm getting is there's absolutely no difference between a huge natural disaster and a tiny little pimple, or an argument you have with somebody, or something you're holding under the surface and irritation, or, well, so some could say, and I thought about this too, that I created that magnification of um, that tension by being annoyed about having to turn around and go back to Wilmington.
Right. Right.
Because I was like, because it was all just a miscommunication. When we left, I had asked my husband if he had put something in my bag, and he said yes. And I said, "Do you have my computer bag?" Because I had my other bag and something else, and he said yes. And I think he thought I said his computer bag, or whatever, and I never checked.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, and it was just, then I was just like, well, blah blah. And then I wanted to put on him, and then I was like, no, it's just, and I kept on hearing the voice inside going, whatever. But that's what we
Right.
have going on. It's something really minor. And it's just a really clear representation of look at how easy that was. It was really nothing major. Yeah, it was an inconvenience, but it was the middle of the afternoon. It wasn't like we were in a rush to go do anything. My husband had a massage appointment that he just rescheduled for this week, and we just went back and got it, right?
Right.
And yeah, so then it's like, okay, but what are you holding on to? Even the tiniest little crumb. Are you holding on to something in the car? You must be still annoyed because look, bam, there's a big, huge traffic jam that you just
Right.
created from that.
Right.
So, and
Well,
it's good.
I can see a place where I know, especially for myself, anytime fear is a factor, is the perfect place to use disperse because it depends on releasing the outcome. And fear is all outcome based.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because you're anticipating, right, what you're afraid of and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Right. Right.
So even if you have to hear that in your biggest, godliest voice, disperse, to
Right.
allow it to go. Um, and that's almost like our higher self taking command and saying, yep, enough of this, let it go,
Yeah.
in one word, which is a really powerful word when we give it that kind of energy.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
energy of getting to the place. And think of it, anybody who's watching this, when we get into a place in our lives when we're just fed up with something or done with it and we don't care anymore, like all the repercussions of walking away from something or letting something go, and we finally turn around and say, yep, um, it's just saying, yep, you know what, I'm just throwing down all my toys and I'm leaving this playground. I'm just going to walk away.
Right.
That's the dispersal energy, because it's like
Right.
letting this all go, and I'm just going to let it happen the way it needs to happen so that I can move forward beyond it.
Right.
And that's that point of surrender, complete surrender. So in an individual's reality, right, that's relationships, that's, situations, disagreements, things you've been holding under the surface, resentment, anger and expectations, fears,
Right.
anything like that that's holding us back in any way or blocking us or excluding the way we complete something because we don't want it this way or we have to have it that way, or all that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. Attachment.
so it's just a matter of, okay, so allowing that to happen, allowing ourselves that power, right, allowing ourselves the power and that wholeness to just look at it and say, disperse,
Yeah.
gone, free, free, let the birds out of the cage.
Right. Right.
All right, well, I think that's what we do. Let's go do that.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Commit ourselves to being consciously aware and observant to that, to take our power in every moment like that, and to allow it, without expectation to, yeah, oh god, it's
Remember the
almost like
power of disbursement.
power of disbursement, allowing ourselves to remember the power of disbursement. It makes me think of asteroids. The game Asteroids just came into mind. Except you can't miss the target because it's within
Right.
you.
Exactly.
And by the way, you can do that with sickness. You can do that with illness. You can do that with bacteria, viruses, cancer. You can do it with all kinds of things.
Right. Right.
Because all of those things are just a collection of fear, anger, anxiety, like, separation-based energy.
Right. Yep.
Oh, that feels so good. All of
Really
that.
done. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my whole
Exactly.
body just started tingling. Like, okay, Yeah, we can do it at the cellular level too. That's awesome.
Right, right.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no word really. I'm like, that's so close. Anyway.
That one definitely has some multiversal implications.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I could melt away. Like I felt like I was so big that I felt like I had so much space when I did that in between my cells that I was just gonna melt away into the multiverse. Like, oh my God, I got so far out there, and then I was like, oh, suddenly I was back here, and I was like, well, how long were we gone? I don't even know.
Oh yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea.
That was incredible.
Ah,
Wow, that feels good at a whole new level.
yeah, whole new levels. Yeah. Now it's funny. My cat that has the tumor in her bladder was in here with me, and at some point she decided she'd had enough and had to leave.
Mm.
Not quite ready for that disbursement.
Whenever
Oh,
she's ready. Come back in. All right. Well, and I can't remember everything. I remember like going through these doors. It was almost like going through these doors or sitting at these tables. And, you know what? It was like a conference. That's what it was because it was like all these different tables. And I walk up this table and I'd be like, and you can let this go now. Like, oh, and then there was like some that I went to and I was like, no, but I don't want it. No, really, just do it. Like now, disperse. And it was like all these, and I can't remember what, like, there were these little tables which I feel like were representative of the things within me, and then there were these bigger ones that were all. It was just, it was really cool, but I can't remember any of it. I was way up. Ah, all right. Well, we'll see what that brings in this week.
yep. See how that one settles in.
Yeah, just
Lots to that one.
what was that?
Lots to that one.
Yeah, it's almost like I could feel the ground rippling with that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Um, have a great week, and we'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter, and
Sarah Sieg Avenue.
signing off on this week's Sunday World. Have a good one.